Hello my babies, welcome to Dreamland Orchard. The dreamland you picked from the orchard is mysterious cases of time slips. Have you ever experienced or know anyone who has briefly jumped in time or slipped into a different period in time? Known as a time slip. A few years ago something strange happened to me on my way from work one December evening. I was driving home from work along the same route I took every day. As it was December, it gets dark pretty quick, usually around 4 p.m. I left work around 5 p.m., so it was pitch dark when I was on the road. The journey home seemed long and boring as usual. However, driving down a certain long stretch of road, something weird happened. This long stretch of road with two distinctive junctions which are controlled by traffic lights. I drove past the first junction, then past the garage which is around halfway on towards the second junction, then all of a sudden I found myself heading back towards the first junction, traffic lights again. I was shocked and slightly confused. I could have sworn I had already drove past them a few minutes earlier. Had I jumped back in time a few minutes? I didn't check the clock, which I really should have done at the time, but I was confused as to what had just happened. I also remember feeling weary as if I had just snapped out of a trance at the time it happened. It freaked me out somewhat. I still drive down the same road, but nothing has ever happened again since that night. I still think about it every now and again, trying to figure out an explanation. Maybe I was tired and thought I was further down the road than I actually was. Maybe I had just zoned out because it was the same journey I took every day, or did I somehow travel back in time even if it was only a few minutes? I was thinking of that strange night today and decided to look at cases of time slips and thought I would share some of these strange time slip cases with you. The Old-Fashioned Hotel. In 1979, a widely publicized story took place. It appeared on Strange But True TV in the UK. Two English married couples known as the Simpsons and the Grisbys were traveling through France en route to Spain for a holiday. On their way they stopped off and stayed at an old-fashioned hotel. They left in the morning and continued their journey to Spain. During the return trip they decided to stop off at the same, except they were unable to find it. They were in the exact same place but it did not exist. If that wasn't strange enough, the photographs they took of the hotel were missing. Even the negative from which photos were developed were gone too. The Battle of Knockansmere. On January 2, 1950, there was a cocktail party held in the little town of Brechin, Scotland. The party was attended by a lady known as Missy F. Smith. She was about 55 years old and was a resident of the village Letham. Miss Smith left the party late after having quite a few of the cocktails. Driving conditions were extremely poor, however she drove home. On her way home to miles outside of Brechin she lost control of her car, skidded off the road and into a ditch. She insisted that her accident was no way due to her fainting, lapse of consciousness or any other factor. She also insisted that she did not get injured nor concussed. She abandoned her car and continued her journey home on foot, which was apparently around 8 miles. It was around 2 a.m. She was around a mile away from Letham village, when she spotted groups of lights moving around in the distance. As she got closer she could see it was a group of shadowy figures carrying flaming torches. She said they were obviously looking for their own dead. The one I was watching, the nearest one, would bend down and turn a body over, and, if he didn't like the look of it, he just turned it back on its face and went on to the next one. There were several of them. I suppose they were going to bury them. Miss Smith came to the conclusion that she had somehow stepped back in time and witnessed Pictish warriors in the late 7th century. Liverpool Bold Street. One Saturday afternoon in July 1996, Frank and his wife Carol were visiting Liverpool's Bold Street to do some shopping. After leaving Central Station, Frank and Carol decided to split up to do their own shopping. Frank went to HMV and Carol went to Dillon's bookstore. As Frank was walking up the incline near the post office towards Bold Street, he suddenly noticed he entered a strange oasis of quietness. Suddenly he seen a small box van which looked something exactly if it was from the 1950s. It sped across the path, honking its horn and narrowly missing him. You notice the name on the van was Kaplan's. When he looked back at the van, he noticed that he was actually standing in the middle of the road. He then crossed to the other side and noticed that Dylan's bookstore had Cripps' name above the door. He looked into the store and was amazed to see women's handbags and shoes instead of books. Looking around, he noticed that people were dressed in 1940s fashion. He spotted a young girl in her 20s dressed in a lime-colored top. She was carrying a handbag that had a popular brand name on it, which made Frank think that maybe he was still in 1996. He followed the girl into the store. As he entered the store with the girl, the interior of the store completely changed back to that of Dylan's bookstore. The girl he had followed in suddenly turned around to leave. Frank grasped her arm and said, "Did you see that?" She replied, "Yeah, I thought it was a clothes shop." White building of Oklahoma. In 1971, a white Ford pickup pulled up to cattle pasture near Parker City, Oklahoma, and it stopped at the gate. The pickup driver and passengers, Cal, Mark, and Gordon, all worked for a cattle feed distributor. They were sent to the remote area to pick up a feeder. What they saw will forever live in their memories. "We opened the gate, which was barbed wire with no lock, and entered," Cal said. "We went on the property, which was covered with grass up to and over the hood of the truck. We realized the truck was almost half full and too heavy to load," Kyle said. "We decided to leave and drove around the red barn, and we saw a large, two-story white house, with no lights in front of us. They returned to the cattle feed company and their boss told them to drain the tank and they could pick it up the next day. We went to the location to retrieve the tank the next night," Kyle said. "This time we decided to go through the old white big house on the hill and brought our shotguns. They drove the pickup onto the land using the same path through the long grass they made the day before and loaded the tank into the truck. They then headed off towards the house. But it was no longer there," Kyle said. "We walked up the L where it stood and there were no signs of demolition, no foundation, nothing at all. What we all seemed to witness the night before, well, it's no longer there. We have talked to each other over the years, but none of us can begin to explain this vision." Bonus story by Bobby Molloy. "I was driving home from work late one night around 1 a.m. I remember exiting the interstate highway. The next thing I remember is sitting in my car, in my driveway. It's 15 miles from the exit to my house. This has happened multiple times to me. If you have any time slip, glitches in the Matrix, or butterfly effect stories, please send them to my email in the link below. Also, if you like the Dreamlands you pick from the Orchard, become a Patreon, and join the Dreamland fam bam. If you can't afford to make a donation and still want to help Dreamland Orchard out, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you Bunchies Munchies, peace out. Dreamland Orchard in.